What's up, athletes? Thanks for tuning in to the Run Like an Athlete podcast. This is a show for the everyday athlete. You won't find talks with pro athletes here, but what you will find is inspiration from the athletes just like you. Athletes who work 9 to 5, stay-at-home moms, and the young professionals who lace up in between the hustle of their everyday life. Today, I'll be talking with Rob Richardson. He is an avid runner and a retired ultimate frisbee player. Rob was born with cerebral palsy. So we're going to talk about how he has been able to overcome some of the doubts and the naysayers in his life to be able to do some amazing things. And of course, we're going to dive into a little bit of his work with the University of Texas. So without further ado, Rob, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, Sonia. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing on this rainy Austin Monday?
Just glad it's no longer raining for our run later today.
That's true. I was getting a little nervous, I'll be honest. It's been raining all day here and like lightning and thundering, everyone who's listening. And we have a run later this afternoon. And I'm really glad that it's gone because running, in my personal opinion, running in rain sucks. I know some people love it, but I don't like it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So Rob, as you know, this is a podcast about the average human who is also an athlete. And so we got to talk a little bit about your work and what you do. Let's get the dating questions out of the way. What do you do for work?
I work at the University of Texas at Austin in human resources.
Oh, so what is that like? What does that entail? Because the University of Texas is really big.
Yeah. So I work at the Texas McCombs School of Business, supporting all of our HR activities with staff, faculty, and students, and really working closely with managers on coaching and developing employees, and then working on every part of the employee life cycle.
Wow. That sounds like a busy job.
Yes, it has been a very busy year during an extraordinarily weird time to be working or doing anything. And I'm excited to see every time I think that we're through the pandemic, there's a new phase. So I'm excited to really move past the Omicron state.
Yeah, I can imagine so. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've had your hands full in the past year. And 2 years, really? Gosh, the pandemic, Lord, how long has it been going on? How have you been able to stay motivated during all of this? I mean, I know a little bit about, we just that everybody listening, Rob and I have done some running together during the pandemic, and man, he would come to our run some days and just be very drained, as I'm sure most of us were during the we're still in it, but during lockdown and everything. So how have you been able to stay, motivated with going and working out when there are days when you just are like, man, I can't do this from work?
Yeah, I think what's been most helpful is having a structure where it's not just, I'm going to run at 6 or whenever I get done with work, or if work is going too long, I'm just like, I guess I didn't do the run today. It's been really helpful having the consistency of Delta Performance. Just Monday, Wednesday, I'm ending my day before 5 to make a 5:30 workout. And it's really helped me set up a really healthy boundary at work.
That's good. So healthy boundaries, everyone. Yeah. I'm big on that too. Setting boundaries is huge. You gotta turn off, especially working from home. I mean, I say this all the time. I've been working from home my entire career, basically. And I had to set those boundaries for myself because you can so easily just get stuck in work mode or go do something. And then you come home where you've been sitting on the couch working all day. And so now you're just going to answer a couple more emails because they popped up, and I'm only watching TV. So it's not a big deal, but it is like,
and that still sometimes happens after a workout where I'm like, I accidentally left my computer open. And I was like, I have one more email. Let me just get this out real quick. So I've learned to just turn off everything and be done for the day. And that's really what's kept my separation of church and state, almost like separation of church and life, or not church and life, work and life.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's been another layer of, now being hybrid and working on campus some days and then working remotely other days. It feels like as close to a normal post-pandemic schedule as we're going to get, and that, like, I like the diversity of working from multiple places.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's great. See, some good things did come out of this pandemic.
Yeah. And you realize just how important it is to run into people in the hallways and have organic conversation and brainstorm on a problem together in person, in front of a whiteboard. And you can't really replicate a lot of that over Zoom.
Yeah. It's been crazy. I recently started teaching at a gym again in person, and don't get me wrong, I love my Delta classes with you and the other runners from all over. I love the idea that I'm, training, not the idea, but the fact that I'm training all these athletes from all over. But there's something about just being in person with a group of athletes that is just, it's unmatchable. Not only being able to go up and like physically help someone get into a certain position or whatever, but just having in-person conversation. I really can see, going back to training in person, I can really see how the pandemic has affected our communication with one another. I'll be leading a class and ask people to introduce themselves to someone, and they're just like, oh my God. And you can see it. People are terrified to just say like, hello. And I'm like, all right, guys, like the pandemic has made us a little bit weird. It's okay. Let's just get it out of the way.
Yeah. I was walking the dog yesterday, and there was a group of Girl Scouts in my neighborhood that were just set up selling cookies. And it ended up being like a 15 to 20 minute, just organic conversation that I was like, I haven't done this in so long. I'm just going to stand here and have an impromptu social conversation with someone who I don't really know.
And you always walk away feeling good, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Okay, so let's get into this workout business, because that's why we're here, right? It's to mostly talk about working out. I want to talk about your overall fitness journey. I know that you have come a very long way, being born with cerebral palsy. I'm sure that you had a lot of naysayers and a lot of people in your life telling you wouldn't be able to do things. And here you are, being a really good ultimate frisbee player and also a really great distance runner. So how did we get here, Rob?
Yeah, I will try to do as short of a version of this story as possible. So I was born with cerebral palsy, and cerebral palsy is a neurological disorder that affects any number of your limbs. So, generally, so the way cerebral palsy affects me is my right arm and my right leg are affected. And so I have limited mobility, balance, senses in those extremities. I can't wiggle my right toes, and I have like some lack of fine motor skill in my right arm. And so in childhood, I got really into soccer and basketball, and kind of just started doing youth center soccer all the way from middle school to high school. And then in my senior year of high school, I went to Boys State, which folks are probably pretty familiar with. And the way that New York did Boys State was that it was run by military drill sergeants, I guess, for lack of a better term. And so part of my Boys State experience was doing sit-ups and running every morning. And after that experience, I was like, oh, I think I should start running more frequently. Or, this is something that I like. And so just started running that summer, and, continued to play soccer. And I got to college and wanted to try something new. Outside of soccer, I'd only done just, any type of music at high school. I was involved in that. So choir, band, jazz band, all that fun stuff.
I did not know that about you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not the black sheep of my family because I am not doing anything musical right now. And at 35, my father still asks me when I'm going back to music school.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I ended up getting to college and I wanted to try something new. And I decided to, try it for the Ultimate Frisbee team because Ultimate Frisbee was, my favorite gym sport. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. It can't be that different from high school. And boy, was I wrong. College Ultimate Frisbee was very different.
Yeah. College Ultimate Frisbee is intense.
Yes.
We used to, for the track team, we would play Ultimate Frisbee sometimes on like our recovery weeks and things. And man, I mean, we actually only did it for like 3 recovery weeks. And then our coach was realizing that we were getting injured because you can imagine a bunch of sprinters and distance runners throwing a Frisbee and chasing after it. Like it got very intense. Yeah. So yeah, that's intense. Did you go ahead?
I was going to say our recruitment strategy in college was to recruit former D1 track athletes who were no longer interested in playing D1 track and just bring them over to Ultimate Frisbee.
Oh yeah. That was a great strategy on y'all's part. That was brilliant. I'm sure you got a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they got that competitiveness and they will like, oh yeah, I can run and you need me to sprint. Okay, I can do that.
Exactly.
I'm sure teaching them the catching part was probably the hard part.
Well, yeah, and it takes you like about 3 to 6 months to learn how to actually catch and throw a disc properly.
Yeah.
And to this day, whenever I walk around Mueller or at the beach or Town Lake in Zilker, I always point out to anybody who I'm with, like, oh, no, I would never play Ultimate Frisbee with that person. Like I will always be criticizing someone's technique no matter where I go.
That's okay. I do that with runners everywhere I go. So. Are we mean? No, I don't know. I think we're just perfectionists is what it is.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So what was that like for you though? Going to play Ultimate Frisbee with having some neuromuscular issues with your hand. How was that for you?
It's funny because like growing up, I had always been in physical therapy, and it wasn't until high school that I started transitioning out of physical therapy because my therapist just said very plainly, hey, you're plateauing and it's now time for you to put in the work. And, at times I think growing up with cerebral palsy, my parents were very uncertain about what my future would look like or what I was able to do physically. And so, I think they laugh now because, when I talk to them about half marathons, they're just like, wait, is this a normal thing? Like, don't get hurt. And I was like, no, Mom, this is they're also musicians. So they know nothing about what is a standard average running event or anything like that.
Okay.
But to answer your question, sorry, that was a really long aside.
I love it.
I don't think that I learned how to talk about my disability until I got to college because it was the first time that I was having to, like, one of the things in Frisbee is that they teach you how to pancake. Like that's how you catch the disc. It's like a big gator chomp. And so I just started learning, I'm going to be much better if I catch one-handed any way, shape or form, and just let me do my thing. And it took us kind of, probably a full year, my first year at college for, my teammates to just be comfortable with that and for me to be comfortable with that and to kind of learn how to kind of compensate for my disability.
But you were compensating in a harder way.
Yeah.
That's hard to do. If anybody has never played Ultimate Frisbee, not only is that Frisbee coming at you so fast usually, but which is why they pancake, but the fact that you're just like snatching it out of thin air with one hand, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, and it's like, it's all muscle memory in a lot of ways of just how do you like the more you do something, the more practice you're going to get. And it's not necessarily the best practice, but if you train correctly, you'll get better and better. And I mean, that's kind of what my sophomore, junior, senior year were all about, of just making sure I did the work, and it all ended up working out really well.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a strange experience to just be like, oh, I don't know any of these people. I have to start figuring it out. Like, I have to talk about this in ways that I didn't talk about it in middle school and high school, because, I grew up with those folks, and, for lack of a better term, my family knew what my limits were, or we were all figuring out what my limits were together. So, it was kind of an interesting experience in college, like learning how to move through physical activity with cerebral palsy.
Yeah. Was there like a moment in college where you just kind of had this realization that like, oh, I can do more things than I thought I could? Like, did you have this aha moment, or was that like after college, or happen at all?
No, I mean, I think it was probably the end of my freshman year. I was hanging out with a bunch of like juniors and seniors, and we were just talking about the year, and they were like, wow, we really didn't think you were going to stick out and stay with us the entire year. But for me, it was like the best like combination of social, lifestyle, and physical fitness that I had been able to find. And
awesome.
I was definitely seeing a lot of progress in that year. And it was something totally new and different.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's awesome, Rob. Oh, yeah. I love that. Oh man. So then when did you do your first, you've run half and full marathons, correct?
I haven't run the full marathon yet. I'm so nervous about the full marathon, only because it looks terrifying. It looks like the training does not look fun. I think that I got into running after, I was running frequently in grad school. And then after grad school, running and doing like some HIIT classes, small runs here and there. When I moved to Austin back in 2013, I was still playing frisbee. It was one of those moments where I moved to Austin. I was like, well, I can play frisbee again, and this is awesome. And
yeah,
I'm 100% in on the frisbee community.
Oh, great.
Yeah, but probably by like 2015, we were starting to explore long distance biking. And by 2014, long distance biking, and that became a little bit more of my priority. Yeah. And then in 2016, or 2015, one of those years, I tried running, and I was like, oh, I can't run more than 3 miles. I'd only been like doing 50-mile bike rides for an entire like 18-month period. And I was like, oh, maybe I should start like running more, like build some other muscles than just biking.
Wow.
So yeah, I feel like my friends and I, we all went from ultimate frisbee to becoming retired ultimate frisbee players, got into biking, and then slowly got into running. And there was a group of us that all did half marathons together, probably beginning in 2016 or so.
That is so great to have a community of people who help not only challenge you, but stick with you through your challenges. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love hearing that.
I think it was just kind of one of those things of like, oh, I could run more, and I actually liking this a lot, and I'm not getting injured as much as I used to when I played ultimate frisbee, and my knees aren't bruised or completely scarred and scratched at all times.
It's a little bit easier on the body.
Maybe. It's much easier on the body.
That's great.
Wait, and that's how I got into running.
I love it. No, I love that. Well, and you're fast. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, I always knew that you were fast when you would come work out with me at my boot camp classes, but like, it wasn't until we got on the track. Rob and I would do some track workouts this summer for, longer distance track workouts. So 800-meter sprints, 600s, 400s, things like that. They're brutal if you've never done a distance track workout before. And Rob's booking it, and he's over here getting past the line and being like, oh, I'm so out of shape. And I'm like, Rob, you just smoked everybody. Like,
I will say it's helpful to have a high schooler set pace for you, and then chasing after the high schooler who's in much better shape than you are.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. And I think that's been always one of my keys of just like train up, like always try to train with people who are, and I don't want to say faster than you are, but for lack of a better term, like
better than you.
Yeah. Someone who's going to, people who are going to challenge you rather than keep the, a leisurely pace at all times.
So you have a very competitive mindset, Rob, which is something that I really admire about you. And I have always enjoyed working with you as an athlete because you are competitive. I mean, I just think that could have gone so easily the opposite direction for you as a kid. So where does that competitive stop at nothing mindset and just mentality come into play for you?
Yeah, I think it's like, it's probably has something to do with like chip on your shoulder, always being, I think with having this disability, you kind of grow up having people treat you differently because you're disabled, or not have the same expectations or lowered expectations for you. And I think that like, in middle school, in elementary school, middle school, and high school, adolescence was not fun. Like, in terms of just
kids are mean.
Yeah, kids are mean. But also just like understanding what can I do physically and how do I push myself physically, and having to go with my physical therapist through back spasms, regularly.
Wow.
Because a lot of CP is also kind of muscle contraction and muscle spasms.
Sure.
So I think a lot of it has, everything to do with chips, small chips on your shoulder of just like, okay, let me prove that I can do this to you and push the limit a little bit. Yeah, it is. I don't know. Everything is a game. I've learned that everything can be turned into a game. So why not turn it into a game? Yeah.
I love that, Rob. No, I think that's great. I very much feel similarly whenever somebody tells me like, oh, you can't do something, or, oh, well, you're a girl. So I'm like, excuse me, watch me go beat you in a foot race. Get on the line. Yes. Let's go. Like, I love that. I think that's great. Oh, yes. All the people out there who have chips on your shoulders, like, just brush it off. Let's go.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny that you kind of brought up that when people look at you, they think like, oh, what can he not do? I have to admit and apologize. Honestly, the first time that you came to one of my workout classes, I was very taken aback because I was like, oh, okay, I have never trained someone who has had to deal with this disability. And I remember going home that night after you being in my class for the first time and talking to my husband and being like, I don't know what to like. I like feeling some kind of way about, do I need to treat him different or do, and Ryan, like, he's the best. He literally like grabbed me by the shoulders and looked at me and was like, Sonia, this guy is a normal human. You need to treat him exactly like that. And I was like, you're so right. Why am I getting so in my head about this? He was like, would you go fix a normal human's form if they were squatting incorrectly in your class? And I was like, well, yeah. And he was like, so why would you not go do that with him? And I was like, you're right. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like, what a silly, it's crazy. It's honestly, it's, now that I'm thinking about it, like, it's almost, maybe selfish isn't the right word, but like, it's so silly that I would feel embarrassed about something that you're having to go through. Like, that's not my place at all.
Yeah. And I think it's because I even have this same experience, that same experience too, when I'm working with folks who are, who experience their disability in other ways. Whether that's, hearing loss or sight impaired, or someone who has a much different version of cerebral palsy than I do. I apologize for calling it versions because cerebral palsy is one of those umbrella terms that is just all related to neuromuscular disease, disorders, and the people are affected by cerebral palsy in very different ways. So
yeah. Well, it's been a joy working with you these past few years, Rob. I really, again, it's your tenacity. I said that right. Yeah. Tenacity. Yeah. Okay, good. and your just drive to do better every single time. And like you said, that little chip on your shoulder, it makes training you really fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So talk to me about, I want to know, let's get serious here because we haven't been serious enough already. What would you say the most challenging thing you've ever accomplished physically has been?
Gosh, I'm like deciding between a backpacking trip and probably the first half marathon that I did.
I want to hear both. So
okay,
we can decide after you tell them.
I think so half marathon training is one of those things, and this is like, it gets back to like the full versus half discussion we were having earlier. Like half marathon training is so doable. Like, just get to 10, 11 miles once or twice and you're good. And then just, you'll figure out the other 2 miles. And it's kind of like that my laissez faire, like figure out the last 2 miles thing that has gotten me into trouble a couple of times. But, I think that, the end of the half marathon with those like that last mile especially is always just like, oh man, Rob, you feel this cramp coming on. Just don't push it any further. Really balancing that, like how many more steps can you take before you're just gonna totally seize up.
I have definitely been there and a half as well. Yes.
So I think that's one that always sticks out to me. And then the second one that sticks out is that my friends and I did a 27-mile backpacking loop in Arkansas. I think you've done the same one, Sonia.
Oh, really?
What national forest is it in Arkansas?
Oh, the Ouachita National Forest?
Yes.
You've done that one?
Yeah.
That one was brutal.
It was brutal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, for anybody who doesn't know, you should go look it up. The Ouachita National Forest in Arkansas. It's a gorgeous backpacking trip, but yeah, it's 27 miles. You have it's something like 30 river crossings or something like that. And when they say river crossings, it's like full blown, you are in hip deep walking through a river. It's nuts.
And my friend described this to me as like, oh yeah, it's really moderate. You can easily do it. I was like, okay, cool. And the one of the friends I was with, she had never done any backpacking, and she's always down for everything. She's run several full and half marathons. Was training for the Boston Half after just delivering her child late last year.
Hell yeah!
So she's always game. But we didn't plan correctly. So for those of you at home, there's 7 peaks right after each other. And they're on like one particular day. And so you have to be careful about, you can start and stop this hike at any point because it is one big loop. And unfortunately, we decided to hike all 7 peaks in the same day with full packs on.
Yeah.
And so I think that for me was the most challenging hiking experience I've ever had, where we're just, you can feel how heavy your legs are at the end of that day, trying to just push to get to that last peak so that you can set up camp in daylight and cook dinner properly. By really at that point it's any means necessary.
Right.
But yeah, just knowing that you're carrying 50 pounds on your back and feeling a little shaky as you're walking up a hill, walking up a mountain.
It's not a hill, it's a mountain.
Yeah. I think that's probably number 2 that always sticks out of my mind. Of like that day, like was mentally exhausting and physically exhausting. And like I would put that as more difficult than the MS 150 bike ride. Where you're doing basically 100 miles in a day. That was painful for other reasons, but I think that's probably number 3 compared to those first 2.
I never thought about that, but backpacking is so mental. And maybe for me, it's because I'm going slow, like slower than if I'm running. A half marathon is, it's mental. It's really tough. And to be quite honest, I'm never been a distance runner until the last few years. So like the thought of running more than a mile at one time always freaked me out. But yeah, I mean, there's something about a backpacking trip that you get so excited, but then it's amazing how within the first like hour of your backpacking trip, all the negative thoughts can start coming in your brain of like, oh my God, this is hard. Oh, I packed too much. Do I have too much water? Should I pour some out? Like, at least that's me. That's what starts going in my mind is like, how can I make this 50 pounds, like 49 pounds?
Never pour water out. I've learned that the hard way. Only bring more water than you think you need. No, so back in college with Ultimate Frisbee, so the way that Ultimate Frisbee tournaments work is that you end up playing 4 to 5 games in a day. And so I feel like whether that's, the last 15 to 20 miles of a 100-mile bike ride or the last peak on a long day of hiking, or maybe, even with the half marathon, like those last 2 to 3 miles, it's like, it's the last day of an Ultimate Frisbee game, or the last game of an Ultimate Frisbee day where, your body is just absolutely exhausted, but you have to just push through and make it through the end of the day. And that's what I compare some of those kind of longer challenges to is like, okay, this is Ultimate Frisbee again.
I mean, that's a great way to do it. At the end of a backpacking day, you are so ready to just be done. And I think, at least for me, knowing that like I have to get to a certain point before I can stop, like is a big help because otherwise, I mean, you just can't.
Yeah.
What do you have like a mantra or like, what do you say things to yourself as you're hiking? Like, talk to me about that.
I will sing a lot.
What?
For the bike rides with my friends, I would just sing like Burn Baby Burn, Disco Inferno, like just like random little things that like you can sing out loud or just scream and then make other people laugh or make yourself laugh always helped me.
That's awesome.
Especially kind of at that like that last peak and the last push of the day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's
I love that.
I don't know songs, or I don't know song lyrics, but I do know a lot of songs.
Rob, I love that. You're just like, just stay positive however you freaking can. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And also I will say it's fun when you're in a half marathon and you are passing a lot of like traditionally fit people and you're just like, oh yeah, I can, yeah. Why aren't you guys running as fast as I am? So
yeah, no, I love that. I think that's great. So I have another question on here for you.
Okay.
What would you say has been the most fulfilling thing you've been able to get through because of running?
Ooh. So one of the reasons why I started switching to running from biking is that I felt like biking, I was able to stay in my head a little bit more, because with biking, it's a little bit more consistent movement. Part of the challenge with biking is that you're doing 30 to 50 miles, but you're always kind of moving at about 15 to 20 miles per hour. And I felt like with running, I had to be more in tune with my body, and I wasn't as in my head when I was running because I was focusing on this goes back to being a marching band geek in high school. Like I was focusing on running in a rhythm and running to a beat that I would just like self-prescribe for myself, and it helped me to think through and deconstruct problems of the day rather than like just sitting in my head on a bike ride for 30 miles. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but like running activated my mind in a very different way than biking did. That was a really interesting part of my professional life and personal life where I just needed stress relief in a way that biking was no longer providing me that stress relief. And I think it was like, maybe it's like the combination of the anaerobic versus aerobic activities. Like you can get a little bit more anaerobic with running, whereas biking takes a lot more power to get into that like fully anaerobic state. Yeah.
Yeah. I can totally relate. So would you say that like the fact that you just moved into running was really fulfilling for you in general? Because that was like...
It was incredibly fulfilling. I think that at that time, I was pretty much in the low professionally. And I just needed something different in a different way to relieve the stress that I was taking on at work and the responsibilities that I had. So that was... Running became a new outlet for me, and it helped me think about my day a little bit differently and kind of relieve my stress in a different way.
Yeah. We've kind of gone like almost full circle here talking about work. Cause I mean, it sounds very much, I always like to know like what motivates people and how they stay motivated to go out and run. Cause I hear that from so many people. I would run more, but I just like, I can't motivate myself to go do it. Whereas it's almost like for you, it's not necessarily that you're motivated to go run all the time. It's that you feel like this is your stress relief. Like,
yeah. And I feel like I definitely notice that I am better at work when I am, it's like eating, sleep, exercise, all that jazz. But like, especially with running or working out consistently, like I am better at work when I'm running and exercising more frequently. And like, I've always noticed that. And yeah.
I try to tell this to people all the time. Motivation is fleeting. Do not rely on motivation to get your workout in, because there are going to be plenty of days where you wake up and you are not motivated at all. And in fact, those are the days that it's like the hardest to go work out. Those are the days that you need to go for that run. Those are the days that even if it ends up not being your super hard run that you were planning on doing, like that's the day that you just need to go do it because you're too much in your own head.
Yeah.
Wow.
I agree.
As we're slowly getting closer to your afternoon run.
I know. And it's also one of those things where like we joke around about consistency, but like consistency is so important to, achieving all those goals, whether that's, with exercise or, at work or personally, like, consistency has really been helpful to me in terms of like achieving a routine and rhythm and success at work, and both, and also just with running. You can't run a half marathon if you haven't been running a whole lot of miles before that half marathon.
Well, I mean, you could, but you'd be in a lot of pain.
Oh yeah.
No, I think I love that you bring up the word consistency, because consistency is, it's huge. And I think that a lot of times we get stuck on not feeling consistent or not thinking that we're being consistent when really we are. Like, just because you have a week where you went out and ran, but it just wasn't the best running week and your body was tired and, this or that, or you were going to go out for a 6 mile run, but you just didn't because I just couldn't get through it. So I got through 3 miles instead. Like, that's still being consistent. Just because you're not getting to the pace that you were anticipating or the mileage that you were thinking you would get to, or, your body was feeling fatigue because the last 2 weeks you've been super consistent with your running. Like, that does not mean that you're not being consistent. You are being consistent. You're still getting out there moving. Just because your effort level isn't the exact same all the time doesn't mean you're not being consistent. And in fact, I mean, you know this, Rob, like your effort level isn't going to be consistent all the time when you're running.
Sure isn't.
It can't be, it can't be. So I think that's huge that you say that, because I think a lot of people can relate to that and feeling that way. So yeah, this has been a great conversation. I have really enjoyed this. Okay. I have one last question for you, Rob. What is your goal for running in 2022?
I don't know. I think that this year, my big goal is to run a half marathon again, or start training for something. I think the worst part about the pandemic for me is, even though I've had the consistency of a workout routine, I haven't had the structure of like, oh, I need to go train for that half marathon. And I haven't had that kind of investment to be like, oh, I'm going to go run more than 5 miles this week. And I think I found it really, really helpful the past probably 8 years or so to have a goal in mind when I'm hopping on my bike or going on a run. It makes that consistency feel a little bit better, and the training, actually changing something much better. So
have a little more purpose behind it.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely think that you should sign up for a half, and then maybe even sign up for a half, and then maybe at the end of the year, sign up for a full.
Ooh.
Oh,
that's going to take a lot of work and effort, I think.
But it sounds, from everything that I've got from this conversation, Rob, is that you love a challenge and putting in the effort. So
I do. I'm a glutton for punishment in that way.
I mean,
yeah,
there are worse things.
Still. Yeah,
there are worse things that you could be.
Yeah.
Well, again, Rob, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. This has been an awesome conversation, and I will be seeing you very shortly for a little guided run with Delta. And I can't wait to watch you run and be a part of your running journey for your next half and possibly your first ever full marathon. Rob inspires me to be better. He has overcome so much and has never let his disability hold him back. That takes a lot of determination and grit. Thanks for sharing your story with us, Rob. And thank you for listening. If you're feeling inspired by Rob's story, please take a minute to share it with a friend. Let's spread a little inspiration today. Thanks, y'all. Until next time, get out there and run like an athlete.